when you put it all together, it's one of the most magical things to see happen. And I feel like in this industry, there are great people in this industry. And I'm very surprised about how much of a brotherhood it really was, like the fire department, like the military, like the EMS.
Together.
When you have a team of mechanics working with a team in the office and they're working towards the same goal and they all understand they're working for something bigger than just I collect a paycheck or I'm going to get mine or whatever that saying is, and you start seeing the numbers come together and it's effortless. Nobody's getting beat up. Nobody's being yelled at. They're just coming together because we're just working as a team. And we're having one-on-ones when somebody's struggling and you're lifting them up instead of beating them down. And I'm not saying it's always perfect. There's some people that don't fit this model.
Sure.
But what I'm saying is when you have the majority of those people just coming together and not realizing what you're doing and the culture that you create, and then you hit those numbers and they can't even express to you how they got there. That's the magic.
Hello, and welcome to the Elevator Careers Podcast, sponsored by the Allred Group. I am your host, Matt Allred. In this podcast, we talk to the people whose lives and careers are dedicated to the vertical transportation industry to inform and share lessons learned, building upon the foundation of those who have gone before to inspire the next generation of elevator careers. Today, our guest is Steve Phillips, Chief Operating Officer at Southern Elevator, based in Greensboro, North Carolina. Steve started his career outside of the elevator industry, gaining knowledge and experience in operations from the military, NASCAR, emergency services, and management for over 20 years. When Steve started at Southern, he found that the management skills and knowledge he had acquired elsewhere were perfectly transferable to the elevator industry. Steve has learned a lot since starting and plans to retire from the industry. He has learned to love elevators and is excited to continue to grow and innovate. Steve, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure. Glad to be part of it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited. It was good to meet you at the spring conference down in Florida and be able to get to talk a little bit more. And so one of the things I really wanted to focus on was the fact that you've joined the industry from outside the industry. And I'm just curious, what is it like joining the elevator industry? Have not really been exposed to it. You didn't grow up in it. Your grandpa and dad weren't part of it. What's that like?
Well, it's been the most challenging part of my career to this date. And I was in the military and I went through basic training. So I would say other than basic training, this was probably the second most challenging career. Management is management. And I think if you have good management practices, you can work in any industry. But what I didn't realize about this industry, it's a very unique industry, and there are many, many different ways to do the same thing over and over again. And you're dealing with a lot of different vendors, and you're dealing with a lot of different cultures. And it was, I tell everybody who comes to work for us that it takes 9 months to feel comfortable. And I'm usually one that gets something very quickly. So I found it exhilarating that I could actually be challenged like that. I actually enjoyed the challenge. So again, we've put better processes. I don't think the 9 months is a big learning curve like mine. When I got here, there was no training program. It was basically fire from day one, and then realized that I had to own everything and fix everything and kind of correct things that I saw that I think made us more efficient. And so I found it very challenging, and I wasn't scared to take the job. I misread how hard it was going to be, and I'm actually grateful for that. So I'm glad to be.
When you said you were looking for a challenge, and or rather that it was exhilarating, were you looking for a challenge at the time?
Yeah. So I was with AAA for 22 years, and then my job got eliminated. I went down to Florida and was excelling there, but wasn't really the fit. I had to come back to North Carolina, and I bounced around a while from job to job trying to find my next home.
Right.
And what I found is my talents were welcome to be, they wanted to hire my talents, but they didn't really want me to use my talents at the jobs that I was in. So I didn't feel
Explain that a
challenged.
little bit more. Dig into that. I mean, when you say they didn't want me to use them, what does that mean?
So I worked for a small like mom and pop door company, and they wanted me to come in and be the manager, but really what they wanted me to be was their yes man, and they didn't want me to manage anybody. They kind of just wanted to tell me something, and then I had to tell the people below me something, and it was the same verbiage, and there was no real management. And I was actually
Right.
getting worried that I was losing my skill set. So when I was looking for this career, um, I wasn't unhappy and I was making, good money, good income that I wanted to, but I wasn't being challenged. And
Yeah.
so I was really starting to question whether this is the right fit for me, because if I can't use my skill set, my management, my leadership skill set, they could have had anybody do this. And
Sure.
it was just wasn't fulfilling. I was going to work every day and wasn't unhappy, but wasn't happy. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So
How did that affect the interview process, or like you say, kind of coming to this?
Well, it was the most honest interview I've ever done, because I had nothing to lose. I
Sure.
wasn't in a position where I was really wanting the job. I wasn't really trying to get the job, or I was just entertaining what would a new career look like. And I was trying to find a home.
Yeah.
What did I want to
And
do?
not afraid to tell
Yeah,
the truth, right? Don't let the
right. I
chips
mean,
fall where they may.
actually, the funny part is when I left the interview, I told my wife I either really bombed this or I'm going to have an offer. And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I was very candid in the interview and wasn't for the first time in my life. I wasn't afraid to talk about me. I was one that never bragged about what I did, or I never sold myself very well. I always just
Sure.
knew I could do it, but I didn't feel
Yeah.
like I had to be my own cheerleader. And I went in the interview and I cheerleaded for myself and basically was very honest about my skill set, and was weird. I thought it was kind of a scary interview, not for me, but it was a scary interview for, hey, I don't even know if they're going to call me back or ever had to do a second or third or fourth interview. It was just like,
Right.
hey, left it all on the table, as you say, if you were an athlete, and then walked away. And they liked what I had to say and they hired me.
Well, and it sounds like, yeah, probably you said the most honest is probably the best interview you ever did,
Yeah, I would agree.
because you were willing to lay it on the table and just,
Yep.
hey, if you don't like me, then it's probably not a good fit, right?
That's
If you don't like my honesty, then don't hire me.
Yeah, I say that in any interview I've ever done, and even people when I'm interviewing them. It's employers make the mistake sometimes that they think they're the ones interviewing. I think the employee and employer relationship, you're interviewing whether this is the right,
Sure.
if when you get to a certain point in your career where you're not chasing money or you're not chasing just give me a job kind of mentality. When you're in that spot where you can take it or leave it, and it's not going to be the end of the world if you don't get this one job, you really are interviewing the company to see if this is going to be a good fit for you and your personality,
Yeah.
and is this going to be where you need to belong.
Yeah, I totally agree. So what were some of your concerns kind of coming in to a totally unknown industry mid-career? Um, what were you looking at?
I didn't really have concerns in the beginning. I would say I had more concerns when I got in the position. Um, didn't realize the career is very sink or swim mentality in the
Okay.
elevator
Yeah.
world. It is very an old school career, and what I mean by that is just by dealing with unions and an apprenticeship. It reminds me a lot of me. I'm a fireman, and I was in the military, and there's a lot of you have to prove yourself as a rookie,
Okay.
um, and that extends to management. So the mechanics that you work with on a daily basis, they're going to test you, and they're going to test you pretty quickly,
Sure.
and they're going to see if you are the right stuff. And if you don't, they're going to break you pretty quick. And once I understood that pretty quickly, within a week or two, I was able to get with the program and really get a hold of, this is going to have to be a relationship of a partnership. They're going to have to understand I come from one side, they come from another, and it
Sure.
was going to have to be. But I didn't need to back down. I needed to show them I knew what I was talking about. Because honestly, coming from not the elevator industry, I came in as um, I would come in with a harder test than
Yeah.
somebody. I don't
Yeah.
get I don't get the blanket, hey, he's from the elevator business, he's been in all his life. It's, hey, all right, guy, what do you think we know more than you, that kind of thing. So,
So tell me, what is the right stuff? What did you have to show up with to pass the test?
well, I read the union agreement,
Okay.
and then I was savvy enough to um understand what you can and cannot do. And so a simple thing like in the beginning, on call schedules, I had a meeting with my guys and I said, look, if you're going to go on vacation, it's your job to cover your on call if you're on call that week. And I got tested right away and I got told, pretty much we don't have to do that, thinking I didn't read the union agreement. So that's the first test, right? They want to see if they're going to play the union card. And because I read the agreement, I said basically it said I can be in charge of the on-call schedules anytime I want. And basically I could either do this nice or I can do this letter to the law. And I just
Sure,
I
sure.
laid it out to them. I said, look, we can have a great relationship where we work together as a team and we do the certain things to make this easier, or we can go to the letter of the law of the union book, which means that I will
Sure.
also follow the letter of the law as a manager for the union book. And I hope you're doing everything the right way every day you show up to work. So that was the first one of like the bravado thing where, hey, I read the book, I'm challenging you, you're challenging me, and I'm just like, we can work this out as a team,
Sure.
or we can turn it into a management versus union thing. And I never wanted that. I wanted it to be a partnership. And so that was really the culture that I built and tried to build with them. But they
Mm.
needed to know that I did my homework.
Right. And to stick to your guns and we're going to work together. So you
Yeah, I
said after,
mean,
yeah,
it's a
go ahead.
gruff industry, right? It's a bravado industry. I mean, you're dealing with men and very little women, mostly in the office, but you're dealing with a men industry, and it's a lot of bravado. So you gotta be able to walk the walk, as I say. So
Yeah. Yeah. What was it after 9 months that really started to come together? Because that's what
it's
you
just when
said.
I started feeling comfortable. Like every
Yeah.
day I would get so challenged that I'm one of those guys that really picks up on things really quickly. And
Mm-hmm.
I can, within 4 months, I can figure out my plan and how I'm going to do it. And then I go on cruise control, like put everything in place.
Okay.
I didn't feel comfortable in the 9 months. I would go home sometimes and I would just be, racking my brain of how come this is not working that I'm trying, or how come this is not going. And the 9 month mark is when I had one day in the 9 month mark where I was like, I can do this and it's not a problem. And I could put it on the cruise control that I'm so used to doing. And then inevitably the next day it wasn't like that. So what I like though is it's challenging. I'm never bored at my job.
True.
I mean, the one thing I will say is you're constantly managing fires every day, all day, and it's how you're handling crisis. I really think management in the elevator industry is crisis management.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and
Whether
maybe being an EMT and a firefighter.
Yeah, so my background being an EMT, a firefighter, working at NASCAR, and dealing with on track incidents that you have to get off the track within a minute and a half, so they can go back to TV, and you have cars going around you at 100 miles an hour. You have to have thick skin, and you have to be able to manage in chaos.
Sure.
And the elevator business world, what I've learned is constant chaos, and then trying to control the chaos or managing the chaos is really what makes you the difference between a good manager or one that really shouldn't be in that position.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. I mean, if you've got a gift for that, then yeah, that's probably a good place for you. And somebody else may not have that,
Correct.
that skill. So
And I'm not saying that all elevator jobs are like that, but if you're working in the operation side of elevators, you need to
mhm,
be able to manage chaos.
yeah. Yeah. So are you glad you came? You glad you stuck it
Oh,
out?
I'm excited. I've been here, celebrated 5 years in April, and I've quickly moved up in different positions, and I found my career. I found my career to retire in, and when I left AAA, that was what I was really looking for. So I'm blessed that there was somebody in Southern Elevator that put an ad out that didn't require
Sure.
um, elevator experience, and really catered to a regional manager or a branch manager position. And that's why I took the chance to apply, and that's how they landed me. Because if it had anything in wording with elevator experience, I wouldn't be here today as the CEO of Southern Elevator. So
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think it was that made you be chosen for the position, even though you didn't have that experience?
so I share this with our leadership group now. I think um, I had a lot of management training put into me. For me to become a manager at AAA, I went through a year-long course with the executives and had to prove that I could learn different things, and it wasn't just, hey, we're going to make you a manager. It was like, hey, you're going to go through this year-long course, and we're going to
Wow.
teach you things that you need to know: P&L, how to lead people, how to manage people, HR roles, how to manage difficult conversations,
Mhm.
how to document. Like, there's just certain things that you have to know as a manager. And elevator, at least the smaller elevator companies, don't have that training. So I think they saw value in all of the leadership that was given to me by other companies, and being able to take that talent and taking that leadership and not having to be the ones to train. I think that's what made me a valuable candidate and why they went with me.
And the fact that you're just plain honest, right?
True.
You just-
I mean, that is, I think so. A friend of mine said to me, he goes, and he knows me very well, and he goes, you are the right fit for this position. You are just enough white collar and just enough blue collar that you just put it all together. And I don't disagree with him. I think I'm enough in the company world, in the the 9 to 5 cubicle lifestyle, and
Sure.
then I've also done all the grunt work, and so that mix, I think, it really helps me to understand like the mechanics of the field, and being able to deal with management. But the one thing I've learned in my life, if you're honest with everybody, you really don't have to worry about what you say or what comes out of your mouth,
Yeah.
right? I don't have
Good
to
point.
see, oh, what did I say to this person? What did this person? And I'm not saying it for everybody, but it's also how you say it and all that kind of stuff. But at least when I say it, it comes with truth.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And obviously there are positions, the jobs within the elevator industry that you really have to have, elevator experience. You can't just go grab an adjuster who's
Right.
a substitute taxi driver and hey, you're going to adjust elevator. Um, what do you think are some of the jobs that are ideal or are good to maybe bring somebody in from the outside and bring in some of that skill that maybe we don't
Yeah,
have?
so I would say that, the superintendents in the mod department need to have elevator experience, but the
Sure.
person who's running the superintendents don't necessarily have to have elevator experience. They just have to have a good working relationship where you can trust the information going back and forth. Branch managers, to me, don't really need to be elevator people. Service coordinators don't need to be elevator people. Operations managers, probably with elevator experience, but I would rather have leadership in those positions. Your management roles really are more I would rather have people that are trained how to deal with people, how to
Hmm.
talk to people, how to influence people. um but I do think mod superintendent level, but any branch office, any office manager, I actually don't look for elevator people now. I'm quite the opposite in the industry. I'm kind of a renegade in that aspect. I'm looking for, do they have leadership positions? Do they have the management skills? Do they have the training background? And even the training that I've seen that came out of some of the international companies, I'm not very impressed with. As far
Right.
as, they teach them the product, but they don't teach them the how to lead people.
Right.
And management and leadership every day is influencing people to do what you need them to do, because you can't make anybody do anything they don't want to do.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's a transaction where somebody gets up and says, I want to come to work and I want to work for this person. And then the other person's like, I want to do best for my people. And hopefully those things match. And then it becomes a beautiful experiment that turns into gold. Um, so I think if I'm looking for the ideal candidate, I'm looking for somebody that has all of those leadership courses that I'm looking for, Stephen Covey, Dale Carnegie, Crucial Conversations, these things, these classes that I know have been out in practice for a long time.
Sure.
What books have they read? Are they going to teach themselves leadership? I'm looking for that, because I have people that have to manage men and talk to people. And if you
Yeah.
can't talk to people, we don't have a company that yells at people. I don't
Good.
allow mechanics to yell and curse at me, and I don't curse and yell at mechanics. And it was that's different than when I first got here. There was a lot of yelling and swearing, and no, we're all going to come to each other with respect.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the game changer. I think that's why we're able to move the needle. We've moved so well in so many, because we're all teaching. I respect mechanics. Like, if you want to ask me how I got this job, the first thing I got asked was, how are you going to deal with people that know how to do elevators, and then you're going to come in and you don't know how to do elevators? And my answer was simple: we're going to start with respect. They have to
Sure.
respect the job that I'm doing, and I have to respect the job that they do. I'm not going to come in and tell an elevator mechanic how to fix an elevator. That's not my role. But
Right.
I am going to tell him, based on the information that I've gathered, that that should take this much time, and will support you, but you have to do everything you can to get that job done right the first time and put it together right, and not take up extra time, so we can move on to the next one, so we can be profitable.
Right.
And it's that simple. And we make things a lot harder in the elevator world, and it's not that hard,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. Well, and just hearing you rattle off those books that you did, I've read those books, and it seems like every one of them is really about treating people like people. Like you say,
Right,
it's respecting them, but hey, you're a human, I'm a human, I'm not here to accuse you of whatever, or like say swear at you or throw you under the
right.
bus. It's like let's just have
A
some human to
conversation.
human dialogue
Yeah.
where I respect you, you respect me, and we're gonna get through this.
I mean,
So
early on, like, until people knew how to deal with me, I mean, I would get mechanics calling me up, cursing at me, and I would just stop them and say, "Hey, we're not going to do that. If we want to continue the conversation, we're going to have a conversation, but
right.
we're not going to be cursing at me, and I'm not going to curse at you."
Which is huge because what you've done is by not allowing that to suck you in, right? I mean, how many
Yeah,
times I confess I've done it, right? When somebody gets upset at me and I get triggered
yeah,
and
yeah. And I'm
you
not
know,
perfect either. I'm not saying I do this 100% of the time, but I work towards that. Yes.
yeah, yeah, and just knowing what that looks like. That hey, I hear you, I hear the emotion, I hear the swear words, I hear the whatever. Let's not go there, right? I'm not going to take it personal enough that I need to yell back and
Right.
defend my
Right.
honor.
Or, one of the tactics I always like to use is, so what do you want to do now? You've just
Yeah,
yelled at me and you've just done whatever. I told you I'm going to work on it. So what's the next steps? And when you ask them that question, they kind of stop in their tracks, because they're used to somebody just, you're a piece of crap. And no, what's your next steps now? You told me, I
yeah.
told you I'm going to fix it. How are we going to fix it?
Now where are we? Right.
Right. What's your solution?
Cool.
It's again, those are the techniques that I've learned in crucial conversations, is how to redirect, or how to stop somebody. And that's who I'm trying to hire in management. I want people that can do that. I don't want people that has been in the field, and that all they know is how to yell at people and curse on the job. And then, see, I try to, so the whole idea, what we're talking about, is creating culture.
Yeah.
So, once I got the job, I tried to create culture, and the culture is, what is the culture going to look like? Respect. I don't want our customers walking by while we're doing a mod or we're doing a repair job, and all you hear is F this and F that. That's not a good look for Southern Elevator, and
No.
that's not, nobody wants to hear that. It's a place of business.
Sure.
Um, so took me about 3 years, but to change that culture and to
Wow.
have them understand what professionalism is and what professionalism looks like. And you got to take it slow. If you try to pull the band-aid off, or you try to do it too quick, you're going to have people reject it. The best thing you can do as management is that they don't even know they're coming along for that ride, and they get to the end,
Sure.
because they're just doing it naturally, because it's a natural
Right.
progression.
Well, it sounds like you're not focusing on, and you can describe this better to me, but like you say, if they don't really know they're coming along, you're not focusing in on, hey, you said that word again, right? You're not making that the big deal. You're really just bit by bit.
Yes, it
Tell me
starts with
that,
so
yeah,
it
more
starts
about
with
that
the
process.
culture. So a good example, some of the things I did when I first got there, is I started having I listened, right? I figured out who were the alphas in the group and who were not the alphas, and you can find out pretty quickly. You see them chit-chatting around, and so I created a little mechanic council, right,
Okay.
with my group. And then I said, all right, you get three are going to be my guys, that we're going to talk about issues, and I'm going to tell you what I want to try. You're going to tell me if it's going to work, or if you can tell me it's not going to work. And I listened to what the problems are. I also sat down and said, what are the problems from this office and management that if you had to pick your top five, what are the biggest problems? So then I started working on those before I did any changes, because I wanted to
Mhm.
show them I'm in it with them and I'm a team. And so I worked on those issues. So that bought me capital. That bought me money for the next thing I needed to do. And so then when I started
Sure.
trying to change some cultures, um, whenever they came to me, I said, well, didn't I just fix those things for you? Didn't I just help you? Didn't my actions show you that I'm your teammate and I'm going to make this happen? Well, now I need you to be teammate for me, and we need to make these things happen so that we can keep everybody going along. And then I put it to him very simply, like, the more money we make, the more we can hire more mechanics. The more we can hire more mechanics, the more everybody stays employed. The less money we make, the less mechanics I can have, and the less people can stay employed. You need to help me get there. How do you help me get there? Well, we have to be profitable.
Sure.
And I told him all this, and we started having Monday morning meetings, and we started sharing numbers. And that was something radical. But we didn't share numbers like we beat them up. We just did numbers for numbers. So if I wanted referrals from a mechanic, and I would go down the list and I would say, this one had $10,000 this week, this one had 5,000, this one had 0. I wouldn't go, you suck because you had 0. I would just say this one had 0. And naturally, they would not want to be on the list at 0.
Well, but they would also understand that, oh, you know what? We did take 4 extra hours to whatever, right? I mean, it's a learning, whether, and especially if you're not, digging into it and embarrassing them in front of all their peers. It's like,
because it became routine and it was matter of fact, that's the ride. They don't even know they're on. And I'm literally just getting there by making sure that we're talking about numbers. We're talking about service completion every Monday consistently at 8:00. We're going to have a meeting. We're going to have a participation. We're going to do an attendance, and we're going to ask you how anything we can do better for you. And then we're going to talk about things they can do better for us. And then we're going to talk about numbers. And we did that consistently every Monday morning for 4 or 5 years.
Well, and you're probably still doing it, right?
We've decided to try something different because we also don't want to make it boring. So now we do one Monday a month, because we're trying to. So here's another thing: when you're trying to get margin, taking guys out of the field, takes up a lot of time that's not billable and not profitable. So what we're doing now is we're moving to once a month doing a Monday morning meeting, but every day we're doing an email blast a text blast to every mechanic, and we're still giving the numbers and we're still giving information. We're just using it in a better way so that we're evolving and we're not taking people out of the field. Gotcha. So we're still doing that, but we're just using a different way to communicate.
Yeah. So you and I talked, I don't know, weeks ago, a month ago, I forget when, but you talked about kind of helping everybody get out of firefighting mode.
Correct. So
tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So when I first got to the office and I became a branch manager, I paid attention to what was going on, and I would see my service coordinator take a phone call, and elevator was down. Customer wants somebody to come out right away, and I would see my service coordinator literally take somebody off a repair job that was scheduled and send them to the elevator was down. And I started questioning, why are we doing that? And I watched the way branches work, and you're constantly getting fielding calls with customers complaining about something or wanting something. I mean, hardly ever does somebody call you and go, I just want to tell you guys did a good job. It's going to be something's down, and then I had to create a triage tree, and I stole kind of what we do into track. And how do you determine who needs the most help for better purposes? Right. If you have multiple cars that crash on the track and you get up there and nobody's hurt, you move on to the next one. You let them figure out how to get to where they need to be. And I was watching our elevator people kind of stick with the people that didn't really need help. And I started putting some questions in place, and it was very simple questions. It was like, did anybody die? Did anybody get injured? Is it their only elevator? I'm sorry, is somebody entrapped? Is it their only elevator? Those 4 questions determine that stops business. That means
whether somebody gets pulled off something or not. You got to determine how important is this? Because if it doesn't matter, the building's empty for the next week.
Correct.
We don't need to be sending somebody over there.
Or how about this? If you have 4 elevators in the building, that doesn't become a priority that one of them is down.
Sure.
We can get to that the next day. And that's where I had to teach, like, we don't have to stop business just because somebody. Now I know it stinks, and I would love to be 24 hours a day, but just that's not a business model where we have just people laying around or sitting in their trucks waiting for a phone call to come. They're busy doing something. So again, building that's empty. I understand that customer wants us there today, but that can wait till tomorrow. Meanwhile, the person that has their only elevator, and it's a 3-stop elevator, and it's an older age home, where people are in wheelchairs or whatever, that needs attention, not the person, not a two stop elevator in an office building where people could take the stairs.
Sure.
So yeah, it was just determining critical thinking skills. And really that's what I was trying to implore. And you realize people, it's natural to me, but I've been doing this since I was 17 in the military, right? You literally go through a class that teaches you if this person is about to die, you just kind of let them die because you go to the person that actually needs help. Those are tough reality conversations. And if you've never been involved in that, but now you apply it to the business level and you say the same thing. If that elevator doesn't need us and that customer doesn't need us right away, we need to prioritize who needs us more. Not who yells at us more, who pays the most money, who actually needs us more. And that changed the whole business model.
Yeah, I was going to say, how has that affected the business overall?
Well, in Charlotte, we turned Charlotte around to be a profitable branch. That wasn't a profitable branch for 10 years before I got there. It made the day a lot more manageable. I have a saying, manage the day, don't let the day manage you. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you're managing your day and you're managing how you're getting to your priorities and you're focusing on things, simple things like I put in place, like do billing from this hour to this hour, do emails and callbacks from this hour to this hour. I created schedules for people that didn't know how to manage their time and say, look, you take some time out and you can let that phone call go to voicemail. You can let the answering service get it. Not everything has to be Johnny on the spot, because if you're always looking at the squirrel, you never catch the squirrel.
Well, you're always distracted. Yeah, you're just chasing the squirrel.
That's right. And then what we were doing is we were actually making our customers more upset. There were repair jobs. People, when they know a repair team's coming, they do things in their office. They put signs up. They put emails out. And then when we don't show up, you're making somebody at that building look really bad. And so we weren't helping those customers either.
Right.
So we were making more customers mad, but trying to help the one customer that called. So it was a snowball effect, and we weren't being very courteous for customer service. And people think customer service is all the time you do everything that the customer wants. Customer service is being open and honest with the customer of what you can and cannot do, and setting realistic expectations.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: you've got a customer who maybe they're expecting, Johnny to show up every time I say, hey, this is down, even though I got 4 elevators. How did that go with them when they realize, what, you're not going to show up? You're going to prioritize that old folks home with only one elevator and people in wheelchairs?
It becomes crucial conversations. So you start meeting with customers and you start setting the expectations. If you have that customer that doesn't understand what we're trying to do, then I have a meeting with the customer and I explain to the customer that while yes, you are very important to us and you're a priority, that if something becomes more urgent, we're going to have to take that because we have a portfolio. Now, you want to pay for extra service. You want to pay for, you can always pay for more priority if you want it, but nobody ever takes that option.
Right.
Usually the ones that are actually complaining about being there on the spot are the ones that are paying us the least as well. Not that that should ever come into effect, but it just seems to go hand in hand every time.
Yeah. Yep. Expecting the most and paying the least.
Yes. That seems to be our industry. Yes.
Yeah. So you told me at one point that you feel like the industry is ripe for a change.
So I've gone to about 3 conferences so far. I have the privilege, and I sit and I listen a lot, and people don't think I listen a lot, but I do. And I hear a lot of talk about change, but I don't see the willingness to change. I see them trying to take whatever the change is and fit it in their box. Well, that's not really how the industry works.
What kind of change would you say is the right kind of change? And what do you envision?
Well, what I envision is elevator companies our industry has been tarnished by the getting to numbers without doing service. Getting to numbers without or doing contracts knowing that you're going to be billing them for every little thing on the back end because you can find it in the contract, and you make those contracts. Some of those contracts I've seen are harder than the military contracts that I signed to become a person in the Army, and my packet was this thick.
Wow.
So it's a lot of lawyerese and a lot of things to just try to undercut the businesses, and then basically hurt the customer in the end so they can make their money, that they undercut the businesses to get the contract. I think
Right.
if the industry really looked at how can we do things better and how can we innovate without taking away service, then I think the industry is ripe for change. And what I mean by that is I think you can still do service. You can still
Okay.
put a great product out. You can still be one of the best companies around and innovate with technology and be able to not technology to replace mechanics, but to enhance the mechanics so that they're more efficient and they're doing things better. And what I haven't seen is I have not seen companies do that yet.
And is that, I think that's something you're working on though, right? I mean, that's part of,
That's what I'm hearing. We are doing it. We've already started doing it, but I
yeah,
keep hearing this at the conferences, but everybody seems to be dumbfounded on how to make it work.
sure.
And so I don't see them embracing the technology and using it for they're all just, from what I've gathered, and I'm not trying to pick on people, but from what I gathered, the questions I hear is, how can I do this in lieu of service? And it's a one focused mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's not one or the other, right? They're not
Right. You
mutually
can do both. And it's
right.
just figuring out how to do both. And then the other thing too is we don't have to keep undercutting ourselves. And I
Sure.
won't do it. Like one of the changes that I made is I'm not going to chase a contract just to have a contract.
Sure.
If you want a bottom bargain for contracts, you're going to pay for that, but you're also going to get that kind of service. If you want people to really do service and you want to
You're getting paid
have
for it.
people
Sure.
like you don't have your elevator go down because we're actually doing service and where you're letting you know there's upgrades, then we're going to be the company for you, but you're going to pay the premium for that.
Yeah.
You don't have to. I feel like the industry always feels like they have to cut corners or cut, try to try to try to do the bait and switch with customers, or I'm trying to be very careful how I say that, but doing bait and switch with customers, or what I've seen is let's take technology and not do service at all.
Yeah.
And that model is not sustainable. I mean,
That's
in
not the
the
right.
short
Yeah.
term,
Yeah.
in the short term, you're going to make a lot of money. But what happens is you see those same companies go through their whole entire staff and people lose their jobs for that short term gain.
Yeah.
Now, I want a long term game where we're going to have customers for life and we're going to be the ones that are going to build those relationships and partnerships and sustain good relationships to the point where people won't leave us because they've been down that road before.
Right.
And we do what we say and we say what we mean. And I think technology will help you get to the margins you want without having to sacrifice service.
Cool. Cool. Yeah. No, this is great. This is great. So Steve, we're getting close to our time, but I've got a few more questions I want to bounce
Sure.
off you. What advice would you give to somebody who's new to the industry, kind of like yourself?
Give it 9 months. First thing I say is learn everything you can learn, but don't always think you have to do it one way. Don't be afraid to try different things and see if you can get where you need to go by going against the grain sometimes.
Right. Very good. What advice would you give to hiring managers that are already in the elevator industry and maybe they feel like, hey, we're just not finding the talent we need?
Start looking for people that would be grateful for the amount of money you're going to pay, that have all of the things you want to check off, but maybe don't have elevator experience. And what I mean by that is if you take somebody, like I've hired 2 people from Big Lots
Okay.
who got beat up on numbers, had to know their P&L, had to be people managers, had to deal with customers, all of the things you want to check off. And they're grateful for the money I'm paying them. Where I take the same person that's been in the elevator business, who hasn't been a good manager, who doesn't know how to lead people, and are going to be very upset for what we're paying them. You know what happens? I build loyalty, and those people don't job hop and try to go to other elevator companies. They
Well,
like
and
it here.
sure. And I mean, you said the people that you were referring to didn't have leadership experience, but it sounds like you've found that there's some people outside the industry with some really solid leadership abilities.
Yeah, and if given a chance, they will show you amazing things and bring new ideas too. Like the other thing is, we can teach them the elevator part. I can teach them the elevator business and how to deal with vendors. And
Sure.
what I can't teach is I can't teach how to talk to people. in the beginning because I don't have time. I don't
Yeah.
have the schooling. I don't have the ability to teach that.
Yeah. Well, and if it's not something that they at least bring a part of that, you know, maybe they're just oblivious to the fact that, oh, people are humans and you need to
Yeah.
respect them. You can't
I
work with
mean,
that.
I start questioning when I start seeing job hopping. I don't hire job hoppers either. Like that's one thing I
Hmm.
won't. I know that sometimes I think the industry uses it as an excuse. Well, it's just the industry, or I hear that a lot, or it's just the way it is in the industry. Why? Well, somebody has to go ask why.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to just be a slave to the industry. You can literally change that by changing who you hire, what you hire, and what those priorities are for your company.
Yeah. Yep. Well, so last question for you, Steve. What is the greatest thing you have learned in the elevator industry?
I have great. That's a probably the toughest question you're going to ask me. I have learned that this is the salt of the earth people that when you put it all together, it's one of the most magical things to see happen. And I feel like in this industry, there are great people in this industry. And I'm very surprised about how much of a brotherhood it really was, like the fire department, like the military, like the EMS.
Well, tell me just a little bit more about that magic when you put it all together.
When you have a team of mechanics working with a team in the office and they're working towards the same goal and they all understand they're working for something bigger than just I collect a paycheck or I'm going to get mine or whatever that saying is, and you start seeing the numbers come together and it's effortless. Nobody's getting beat up, nobody's being yelled at. They're just coming together because we're just working as a team and we're having one-on-ones when somebody's struggling and you're lifting them up instead of beating them down. And I'm not saying it's always perfect, there's some people that don't fit this model,
Sure.
but what I'm saying is when you have the majority of those people just coming together and not realizing what you're doing and the culture that you create, and then you hit those numbers and they can't even express to you how they got there. That's the magic, right?
Cool.
Like I'm very good at articulating how we got there because it was my plan, but some of these people don't even realize how we got there. They just come to work every day and they just do little things that we've asked them to do. But then you eat that whole entire elephant and you can't believe you ate the whole entire elephant and you're like, wow, we really did stuff. I'll challenge any of your people that are listening. If you ever want to really understand how to build a culture, read the book Well Done. It's a very easy read. It's by Ken Blanchard, and I'm not getting any money for that. But Who Moved My Cheese and Well Done. Those are two very simple books that I make everybody read. And when you come down to it, it's just a mindset, but it's how you talk to people, it's how you teach people, it's how you treat people. That's how you move numbers. That's how you get to where you need to be. That's how it becomes magic.
That's awesome. I mean, and part of what I'm hearing you say is that there's a synergy. There's a something that starts to as everybody comes together and does their part, then it's like the sum is greater than, or
Oh,
the whole is
use
greater than
whatever
the sum of the
cliche you
parts.
want. You
Yeah.
can use when you watch a football team put it all together, or a pit stop crew that has 12 seconds to basically dismantle a car and put a car back together. Or you're talking about a baseball team that everybody's doing their part. Or you ever wonder how you get young 18-year-old men to go get shot at?
Mm, yeah.
I can tell you, you make it better, you make it about something bigger than it is. And so when you're working for something bigger than it is and you accomplish that, you feel like you're on top of the world
Yeah.
because you've come together and everybody does their part, and then it's like it again. That's why I call it magic.
Beautiful. Steve,
Yes.
thank you so much. I
Thank you.
appreciate your time. It's always good to talk to you, and thank you for your insights today.
No problem. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Elevator Careers podcast, sponsored by the Allred Group, a leader in elevator industry recruiting. You can check us out online at elevatorcareers.net. Please subscribe, and until next time, stay safe.